Hello and welcome on Thomas Geiger Car. Today with the second generation Toyota Mirai, one of the few fuel cell cars on the market. While everybody is sure the future propulsion will be electric, there is a lot of dissent which type of energy storage will be in the vehicle. Tesla has made its stakes, Volkswagen, Audi, BMW, Mercedes are following with battery electric vehicles. But Toyota, same as Hyundai and some Chinese companies, are betting on the fuel cell, burning hydrogen in a very special chemical process with the only exhaust gas is steam. The car in the first generation was pretty experimental, very expensive, not really beautiful and a bit difficult to drive. Second generation should be the more practical vehicle, down to the everyday life. Everyday life means better design, better size, most of all better range and lower price. If that's a true promise and if the car could fulfill what the engineers are telling, that's what we're going to figure out in our first test drive with a late prototype of the new Toyota Mirai. Since we're still ahead a few weeks of the market launch, the car is still camouflaged as a prototype, even if it's a pretty finely developed vehicle. But even with the camouflage foil, you can see that the Mirai second generation is way more beautiful than the outgoing car. A bit like with the Prius. The first one was eye-catching but ugly, and as older the Prius became, as better the design became. Same here with the Mirai. It looks pretty sleek, pretty sporty, pretty elegant. Some people are reminded on the Kia Stinger if they've seen the vehicle at the Tokyo Auto Show last year for the world debut. But it's not only more beautiful than before, it is also way bigger. It has increased in length for about almost half a meter, making it 4.98 meters in length. It's like you step from a C-Class in an E-Class Mercedes. Why Toyota did that? First, to maximize the interior space. Now the car fits 5 people instead of 4, but also to maximize the space for the technology. The hydrogen tanks, the fuel cell, the stacks, all that needs more space without compromising the interior. That's why we're talking about a bigger car now. It is a permanent race between battery electric vehicle and fuel cell. Once the one technology is ahead and the other time the other technology is leading. At the moment it looks pretty much like the battery electric vehicle is taking the lead. But fuel cell is not dead yet. Why is that the case? Because A, it is easier to provide clean hydrogen than to provide clean electricity, and the fueling of the vehicle is way faster. While a battery electric vehicle has to be charged for hours and hours to get a decent range, the fuel cell vehicle doesn't take much longer than a petrol or a diesel engine to fuel up the tank. The disadvantage is we don't have enough charging stations yet for the electric vehicles, even if the market has developed very strong and very fast and we have thousands of plugs around the streets. At the moment in Germany, we only have about 100 hydrogen fuel cell stations, and even if the industry is pushing a lot, it will take a long time until we have a complete network to give you everyday mobility. Since you can't see much under the hood, the screen of the new infotainment system is pretty good to explain the systematic of the fuel cell. We have the hydrogen tank here. In the actual vehicle, it's 2 tanks in the trunk and 1 in the center console, in the center tunnel. We have the fuel cell that burns in a cold way the hydrogen, producing electric energy and as exhaust gas steam. And we have, yes, also a small battery. That is not as big as in a plug-in hybrid or an electric vehicle, and it's not really to provide the electric energy for the whole drive. It's just to give you a little bit of buffering so the fuel cell can work in a constant way and you always have enough energy to start the electric motor. In this case, it's mounted at the rear axle. First generation Mirai had front drive, now we have rear wheel drive, and Toyota is promising a more engaging drive feeling. That's what we're gonna figure out right now. Looks like a car, feels like a car, it just is a car. While the first generation Mirai felt a bit experimental and you had the feeling you're sitting on a kind of complicated chemistry plant, now you're just feeling like sitting in an ordinary EV. There are no strange noises, there is nothing strange happening, it is just cruising along like you have it in a Volkswagen ID.3 or in a Skoda Enyaq or in a Mercedes EQC. Everything is calm, everything is smooth, everything is easy. Just enter the vehicle, start the engine, put the gear lever in D and drive away. Talking about the drive, I would love to tell you how fast the vehicle is, how much horsepower it has and the actual range. Problem is, it's Corona times and I don't have an engineer with me, but only on the phone in a few days. So I'll keep you posted and will follow up with these informations.
It took a little while and unfortunately it was after the test drive, but finally I had the chance to talk to the chief engineer of the new Mirai and to get some detailed data. So now we know that the electric motor develops 182 PS and a maximum torque of 300 Newton meters, enough to accelerate the car in 9.2 seconds from 0 to 100 and to gain a top speed of 175 kilometers per hour. Not very much compared to a conventional internal combustion engine car in that segment, but you have to bear in mind that it's all about range and that the fuel cell is quite heavy. So the Mirai brings it to 2.4 tons. And for that, the range of 650 kilometers is not too bad. I also learned that the buffer battery that is installed in the vehicle to guarantee you enough electric energy to start up the vehicle is just 4 kilowatt hours of capacity. Just to give you an idea, that's less than in the Prius, and I'm not talking about the plug-in version, but the standard hybrid car.
If you drive the car like it starts up, it is pretty silent and it's a wonderful calm drive. But if you miss the engine sound, there's a sound generator that you start with a button, and you hear a nice beep, and then you hear an artificial sound that is absolutely awkward. Don't use it, it sounds like a PlayStation, but not from 2020, more like a PlayZ-1 from 1995. The drivetrain might be of the futuristic kind, but the interior of the Mirai is just standard Toyota. A little more upscale, a bit nicer materials, but pretty conventional. Big touchscreen, digital cluster instruments, all assistance systems that you need. Just an everyday car. The first generation Mirai was produced in pretty small volumes. It took Toyota 5 years to get 10,000 cars on the road. Second generation, the volume should ramp up pretty fast. They are planning about 30,000 vehicles per year instead of 10,000 in 5 years. Why? Because Toyota is convinced that the fuel cell is the drivetrain of the future. And while Volkswagen, for example, totally denies the technology and Mercedes just stopped the production run of the GLC with fuel cell, the Korean manufacturers and Honda are sticking to it. And most of all, the trucks are coming with fuel cells on a broad fleet in the near future. And Toyota is convinced, whilst more cars and more trucks get on the road, the technology will mature and people will be more interested. That's why they hope to increase their volume pretty dramatically. Thanks for joining me on that first review with the second generation Toyota Mirai. A real, authentic, modern car. Whilst the first generation felt a bit like an experiment, this car is ready for everyday use. Size and shape got way better. Driving feeling is confident and comfortable. The range went up, the price went down, so Toyota has done its homework and the race between battery electric vehicle and fuel cell electric vehicle is on again. Who's gonna win? I have no idea, because that has to be decided by the market, the customers, the infrastructure and the politics. But whilst the fuel cell has been left behind for years, now it's back in the race. Thank you for joining me on that review here at Thomas Geiger Car.